drizzling. The cold wind coming through the cracks of the door made creepy sounds. I had just finished a late shift and returned home. After changing, I lay back on the sofa, intending to turn on the TV to watch a movie to relieve my fatigue. My phone vibrated on the table. I glanced at it and noticed a new message. The screen lit up in the darkness of the room. My heart stopped when I read the strange words. "Don't stay home tonight." I frowned. The phone number that sent the message didn't show a name, nor did it show any signs that it was a prank from a friend. A chill ran down my spine, as if an invisible hand was placed on my shoulder. I tried to reply, "Who is this?" But immediately, the system reported that the message could not be sent. It was strange. I laughed awkwardly, trying to reassure myself that it was just a spam message, some random glitch. However, in the dark space, with only the sound of the drizzling rain, the message echoed in my head. "Don't stay home tonight." It was like a curse, a serious warning, not a joke. I walked to the window and looked out. The street was deserted, the yellow streetlights reflecting the swaying treetops. Everything was strangely peaceful, but that peace made me even more uneasy. I tried to ignore it and continue watching TV, but I couldn't concentrate. The small sounds in the apartment suddenly became clear. From the dripping water in the kitchen to the wind whistling through the cracks in the door, everything seemed to remind me that I was being watched. I turned on my phone to check again. The message was still there, the red text appearing on the screen, cold as a knife. This time, I paid closer attention. The time the message was sent was 11:11 p.m. A strange duplicate number. Feeling that something was wrong, I decided to try calling a close friend, Mark. He picked up after a few rings. I tried to explain everything, but when I mentioned the message, my voice suddenly trembled. Mark laughed loudly, saying that I must have seen too many horror stories and imagined it. He advised me to turn off the phone and sleep to forget. But when I hung up, I still couldn't rest assured. The apartment suddenly became stuffy. The air seemed thick. I went into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water, but my hands were shaking so much that it spilled all over the table. I took a deep breath, telling myself that if I could just get through the night, everything would be fine. But as soon as I got back to the living room, my heart dropped to rock bottom. A new text message appeared on my phone screen. This time, it was even more terrifying. "David, if you're still there, you won't survive the night." I froze. My name? Exactly. It couldn't be spam. Someone knew me, knew my name, and was watching me. I backed away to the wall, my eyes glued to my phone, my heart pounding. I frantically checked the locks. All the doors were securely locked, but that false sense of security brought nothing but helplessness. I began to think about the possibility that someone had hacked my phone. But just as I was about to turn it off, the screen lit up again, as if it were alive. The third message appeared. "Trust me, leave this place now. There is a chance to live outside. If you stay, you will die." My whole body was cold. A cold wind blew through, even though the window was closed. I held the phone tightly, my eyes looking around the familiar apartment that suddenly became strange. The cracked wall, the yellow light bulb, the sound of rain tapping on the glass window, all created a gloomy scene. I could no longer tell what was real and what was imaginary. Did I really receive a message from the future? Outside the window, a lightning flashed, illuminating a blurry figure standing at the corner of the street. I squinted to look closely, but when the lightning went off, the figure disappeared. My throat was dry, my limbs numb. I understood understood that whether it was real or imaginary, tonight would be unlike any other night before. And perhaps that message was the door that led me into a scary world, where every decision could determine my life. I stood there in the room, my heart pounding with fear I had never known before, and I knew the horror had only just begun. I stood still for a long time, my hand gripping the phone tightly as if clinging to a lifeline. The message was no longer a joke. The way it called my name, the time it arrived at 11:11 p.m., everything seemed to be set up to instill fear. I decided that I would not let myself sit still and wait to die in this apartment. Taking a deep breath, I put on my thick coat, grabbed my keys, and walked out into the hallway. The door closed behind me with a dry, echoing sound, sending a chill down my spine. The apartment hallway was dark because of the dim light bulbs that only flickered. The sound of the rain outside echoed in, making the space even colder. I walked, each footstep echoed clearly, as if it were endless. This building was old, the walls were peeling and patchy. The hallway smelled of mold mixed with rust. I kept glancing back as I walked, feeling as if someone was watching me. But there was nothing but a pitch-black void. I tried to reassure myself that it was just a psychological effect, but my heart was still pounding, the fear growing stronger. The phone in my hand vibrated again. A new message appeared. Good, you listened, but don't look back too long. There's something standing behind you. I was stunned. My blood seemed to freeze. My instincts told me to run immediately. I rushed towards the emergency stairs, each step echoing in the narrow space. Every sound behind me seemed to be following me, making me feel as if I slowed down for even a second, some cold hand would grab my shoulder. When the stair door opened, I slipped because of the rain dripping from the leaking roof, almost falling. My heart was pounding. I held tightly to the rusty iron railing to keep my balance. The stairs were dark. The dim light from the lamp above was only enough to illuminate a few steps. I started down, trying not to let my legs shake. The phone vibrated again. This time, the message was clear. Go down 3 more floors. Don't stop. Don't turn back. The feeling of terror rose, but I still walked on. My hand gripped the phone so tightly that my palms were sweating. Each step creaked, as if signaling an impending collapse. My breathing mixed with the sound of the rain outside, creating a strange rhythm. When there were 2 more floors, I suddenly heard something. Footsteps, slow but heavy, echoed from above. I stopped, my heart almost jumping out of my chest. The footsteps weren't mine. They were getting closer, clearer. I swallowed, hurriedly rushing down the next step. The footsteps also accelerated, echoing throughout the narrow staircase. I clearly felt the presence of an invisible being chasing me. When I reached the ground floor, I almost ran out of the stairs. The rusty metal door made a creepy creaking sound. In front of me was the hallway leading to the main door of the building. The fluorescent lights flickered. The continuous flashing light made the scene even more ghostly. I walked quickly, then suddenly, the phone vibrated again. A new message appeared. You have 30 seconds. If you don't get out of the building, it will be too late. I clenched my fists, my heart pounding like a drum. My legs suddenly became heavy, as if they were stuck to the floor. I used all my remaining strength to rush towards the main door. Outside, the dim light of the street lamp seemed like the only hope. The door was heavy. I had to use all my strength to pull it open. The cold wind and rain hit my face as soon as I got out. There was a creepy sound behind me, like hundreds of my heart. The last message was still shining on the screen, as if reminding me that the real horror was still ahead. I stood frozen in the heavy rain, breathing heavily, my heart still pounding as if it was about to burst out of my chest. The cold rain splashed straight into my face, making me a little more awake. But that coldness could not soothe the fear that was gnawing at every fiber of my being. The street was deserted, the yellow streetlights reflected on the glistening road. I looked around, hoping to find a human figure to feel less lonely. But all I saw was a terrifying emptiness. The phone in my hand vibrated again. I trembled as I opened the screen. The words appeared. "Don't stand still. Something is looking at you." I swallowed, my throat dry despite the cold rain that was continuously pouring down. I turned around. Darkness filled the hallway of the building. Only the lightning flashed briefly. In that moment, I saw a figure standing motionless right inside the glass door, tall and thin, face unclear. When the light went out, the figure also disappeared. I turned around in panic and ran down the street. My wet shoes made a heavy sound, each step clearly audible in the rainy night. The road was long and endless. The houses were closed and quiet. It seemed like the whole neighborhood was fast asleep, leaving me alone to face the shadow that was clinging to me. The rain lashed at my skin. The wind howled in gusts, making the scene even more eerie. When I reached the corner near the abandoned park, my phone vibrated again. A new message: turn left. If you keep going straight, you will never come back. I stopped, my legs trembling, thousands of questions swirling in my head. Who was sending these messages? How did they know my every move? And more importantly, could I believe it? But when I looked up, I saw that the end of the straight road was a thick darkness, as if swallowing all the light. My heart told me to believe the message, even though my mind screamed that it could be a trap. I turned left, rushing into the narrow path, lined with old trees on both sides, bare branches swaying in the wind. This place led to the back of the park that had been abandoned for many years. The sound of rain on the treetops echoed like 1,000 whispers. I shivered, feeling as if countless eyes were watching me from the darkness. The path led to a rusty iron gate, I pushed it gently. It creaked and made a creepy sound. Inside was the once bustling park, now just a cold wasteland. The swings were rusty, the seesaws were broken in half, rows of stone benches were covered with moss. Mist rose from the ground, mixed with the rain, making the scene blurry like in a nightmare. As soon as I stepped in, my phone lit up again. You are safer here, but don't trust the silence. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself, but this silence was not peace. It was thick, eerie, like before a storm. The sound of rain falling somewhere was suddenly swallowed up, replaced by another sound. I heard the sound of metal rattling. Turning around, the old swing was swaying gently, even though there was no wind. I took a few steps back, my heart pounding, my eyes glued to the movement. Suddenly, a piercing screech rang out, like metal being scraped. I turned and ran deeper into the park, hoping to find shelter. But the more I ran, the thicker the fog became, blocking all exits. I was lost in a maze of darkness and rain. My phone vibrated, the light of the screen the only light to guide me. New message: don't let it see you. Be quiet and keep going. I held my breath, slowing my steps, each movement like walking on thin ice. Then, from within the fog, I saw it. A tall figure, covered entirely in black, standing with its back to me. The figure was motionless, but every bit of air around it seemed to be trembling. I strained my eyes, trying not to make any noise, but my foot accidentally stepped on a broken branch. A dry sound echoed. The shadow slowly turned its head. I couldn't see its face clearly, only two dark eye sockets like deep pits where light couldn't reach. A cold chill ran down my spine. My legs felt like they were about to collapse. It walked towards me, slowly but surely, like a predator that had seen its prey trembling before it. I gripped my phone tightly, my hands shaking, waiting for the next message. The screen lit up. Run now. Don't look back. This is your only chance. I immediately rushed forward, my heart about to explode, my feet plunging headfirst through the rain and thick fog. Behind me, heavy footsteps followed closely, getting closer and closer. The entire park seemed to be spiraling into a nightmare with no way out. And then, I rushed through the winding paths of the park, the sound of my heart pounding in my chest, drowning out the sound of the rain that was pouring down relentlessly. My wet shoes splashed water every time they hit the ground. Behind me, the heavy footsteps were still chasing me, regular and terrifying like the beat of a death drum. I didn't dare to look back, just rushing through the thick fog, hoping to find a way out. The light from my phone flickered to light the way, then suddenly it vibrated again. I glanced quickly. The screen showed the words, "There is an exit on the right, but you have to go now." I turned sharply, rushed to the right, almost falling when I tripped over a block of cracked concrete. My breath was rapid, my lungs were burning hot, but fear kept my feet from stopping. The path led me to an old amusement park. The wooden horses had peeling paint. The carousel was rusty. The swings still swayed even though there was no wind. Everything was covered in moss and a musty smell. I paused for a moment, trying to listen. The footsteps behind me had stopped, but the silence was even more terrifying than hearing it. The air was compressed, as if the entire park had stopped breathing. I trembled as I held my phone, the screen lighting up at the right moment. Don't trust the silence. It hasn't left yet. I stepped back, my eyes scanning the area. From within the hazy mist, that black shadow appeared again. It stood motionless at the head of the path, its tall body blocking the distant streetlights. Without needing to see its face clearly, I could still feel its cold gaze piercing my body. A sudden strong wind blew through, making the swing creak. The shrill metallic sound echoed throughout the space, mixing with the sound of the rain to create a mournful melody. I backed away, but my legs felt like they were about to give out. I knew I couldn't stand still for another second. I turned and ran, rushing deeper into the park. The shadow still followed, slowly but surely, as if it knew that no matter how far I ran, I still couldn't escape. The phone rang again. "There's a wooden hut ahead. Go in there. Don't hesitate." I looked up, and indeed, at the end of the road, behind the dense trees, a small, dilapidated wooden hut appeared. The wooden walls were moldy, the roof was leaky, but at the moment it seemed like the only place I could take shelter. I rushed in, pushed the rickety door open, and slammed it shut. The hut was dark. Only the dim light from the phone screen illuminated the thick dust on the floor and the musty smell of rotten wood. I gasped, my back against the wall, my whole body drenched. Outside, I heard footsteps slowly stop right in front of the door. There was no knocking, no sound, just a terrifying presence filling the air. The phone rang. "Don't make a sound. It's listening." I held my breath, my hands shaking with fear. Time passed heavily. Then from the roof, a scratch scratching the wood. I raised my head, cold sweat pouring down my forehead. The scratching sound moved along the roof, circling the hut as if it was trying to get in. I backed away, my heart pounding as if it was about to tear my chest apart. The phone lit up again. Don't go out. Wait until I call for safety. I held it tightly, nodding slightly as if responding to an invisible person. But at that moment, the wooden door shook violently, as if a giant hand was pounding from outside. The loud banging almost made me faint. I retreated to the corner of the hut, my back pressed against the wall, my eyes staring at the shaking door. The banging stopped suddenly, leaving a deathly silence. I didn't dare move. Then a small crack of light flashed in the doorframe, as if someone was peeking inside. I froze, my breathing ragged. The phone screen lit up again, this time with just 3 words. It knows you. My whole body was limp, a wave of despair rising. I knew I didn't have much choice. Outside, the rain was still pouring. The wind was howling through the cracks in the wood, and something was still patiently waiting for me to come out. The air in the wooden hut was so stuffy that I could hardly breathe. The smell of mold and rotting wood rushed up my nose and made my stomach churn, but fear overrode all other feelings. I pressed myself against the corner of the wall, my eyes fixed on the wooden door that had been shaking violently just a few minutes ago. Outside, the rain was still pouring down, but mixed with it were strange silences, as if the whole world out there was holding its breath with me. I held up my phone, the weak blue light illuminating my pale face. The screen was blank, no new messages. I waited, my palms sweaty. Time seemed to stand still. Then suddenly, from the roof, a faint sound rang out. This time, it was no longer a scratching sound, but the sound of slow, heavy footsteps, moving step by step on the fragile wooden ceiling. I raised my head, my heart pounding. Each step seemed to step on the tense nerves in my body. Dust fluttered from the cracks, and a few pieces of rotten wood fell right next to me. I clenched my fists, feeling helpless. Then the phone screen lit up. Don't breathe too hard. It knows you're here. I immediately held my breath, pressing my body against the wall. My heart beating so fast, it felt like it was about to tear my chest apart. The footsteps stopped right above my head. Silence reigned, except for the sound of water drops from the leaking roof falling onto the rotten wooden floor. I strained my eyes to look up, and in the darkness, I vaguely saw a small crack. Then suddenly, a drop of black water fell on my forehead. I quickly wiped it away, but the liquid was thick and cold, not like rain. A shiver ran down my spine. At that moment, the wooden door in front creaked again, as if an invisible hand was trying to push it in. I held my breath, raised my phone to read the message. Sure enough, the screen lit up again. If it gets in, don't look it in the eye. Run at all costs. I trembled, my fingers gripping the wooden wall. The words were like a haunting curse, making me panic even more. The wooden door creaked. The rusty hinges shook from time to time. I could clearly hear the wind whistling through the cracks, mixed with an incomprehensible whispering sound. It seemed like there were many voices at the same time, not one person, not a single creature. They whispered distorted sounds, like a distant curse from the darkness. I knelt down, hugging the phone tightly, my heart filled with despair. This small hut would not protect me much longer. Suddenly, from behind, a strange sound rang out. I turned around, startled, realizing there was a small side door in the corner of the hut, covered in dust. crawled over, trying to open it. The door was heavy, but after a few tries, it swung open, revealing a narrow, dark passage. The phone lit up at that moment. Go out that way. Quickly, having no other choice, I bent down and crawled through the crack in the door. Outside was a small, muddy path, running deep into the forest behind the park. I looked back and saw the door of the hut shaking violently, as if something was trying to break it open. Not daring to hesitate, I rushed into the darkness of the forest, letting the rain and wind whip my face. The old treetops closed overhead, blocking most of the light, leaving a dim space. The sound of rain falling through the leaves created a strange sound, like 100,000 small footsteps moving together. I walked quickly, the mud stuck to my shoes, making each step heavier. In my ears, strange whispers seemed to follow, echoing from the surrounding darkness. The phone vibrated again. A new message appeared. Don't leave this path. If you get lost, there will be no chance of returning. I clenched my phone tightly, continuing to walk aimlessly. Behind me, a low roar sounded, distant but enough to make my blood freeze. I knew it was still following me, just waiting for me to make a mistake so I could appear again. The path led me to a small clearing in the forest. There was an old stone bench, covered in moss. I stopped, my heart pounding, a feeling of fatigue coming over me. But before I could rest, I noticed something carved on the bench. I bent down, brushing the moss away with my hand. The words appeared, blurred but still clear. David, don't come back. My whole body was numb. Who had left this writing? And why was my name here, in the middle of a cold, wild forest? I looked around. The fog was thick, obscuring all paths. In that white space, I caught a glimpse of a figure standing in the distance, motionless, heading straight towards me. My breath caught. I backed away. The phone vibrated again. The new text that appeared made my blood run cold. Don't let it touch you. I took a step back, my eyes never leaving the figure standing far away in the mist. My body shivered from the cold, but what made me shiver more was the truth before my eyes. On that old stone bench, my name had been carved long ago. It couldn't be a coincidence. It couldn't be a coincidence. It felt like everything was prearranged. Every step I took, every place I stopped, was part of some evil plan. The phone vibrated in my hand, the bright light tearing through the darkness. The words appeared, don't let it get close. If it touches you, everything will end. I gripped the phone so tightly that my knuckles turned white. Breathing heavily, I looked back at the figure in the mist. It began to move. The steps were slow, steady, but echoed as if the ground was shaking. I turned back, rushing into the narrower path in the forest. The branches whipped at my face. The rain splashed directly on my skin, but I didn't stop. Each step seemed heavy. The mud stuck to my shoes as if it wanted to hold me back. I could clearly hear the footsteps behind me, getting closer and closer. A feeling of terror crept in, as if that shadow was only a few heartbeats away from me. In my panic, the phone vibrated again. I glanced at it. There's an abandoned house on the left. Go in there now. I looked up, and indeed, a faint light flickered through the fog on the left. I turned sharply, rushing towards it, my heart being pushed by an invisible force. The dilapidated wooden house appeared, its roof leaking, its door crooked, its walls peeling. It looked no safer than the hut in the park, but I had no other choice. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The space was damp, dark, and musty. The tables and chairs were broken, and cobwebs stripes were all over the ceiling. I closed the door, leaned back against it, and gasped for breath. But then I heard a creaking sound. In the corner of the room, a wooden chair was shaking, as if someone had just sat down. I stood there, frozen, eyes wide open. The phone lit up again. Don't look directly. Just know it's there. I swallowed, my heart tightening. But curiosity and fear made me unable to hold back. I glanced at the chair. A figure sat there, faint, thin, hair covering its face. It didn't move, but the atmosphere around it was so thick it was hard to breathe. Suddenly, it started to move. Its head tilted to one side, hair revealing a pale, lifeless face, black eyes staring straight at me. I jumped, quickly turned away, my hands shaking. The phone lit up. You looked. Now run. Without thinking, I rushed up the rotten wooden stairs in the house, letting it creak under my feet. The upper floor was dark, with only the dim blue light from the phone screen to guide the way. I opened a door and entered the dusty room. The window was cracked, the wind howling, making the curtains flutter. I crouched down in the corner of the room, my heart pounding so fast that my chest felt like it was about to burst. Outside, footsteps echoed, each slow step climbing the stairs. I held the phone with trembling hands, waiting for a new message. Finally, it came. Window. Jump down, immediately. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. The second floor was too high. Would I survive if I jumped down? But if I didn't, that thing would find me. With no time to think, I rushed to the window and opened the rotten wooden door. The wind and rain hit my face, freezing cold. Behind me, the door opened. I glanced over. A figure with pitch-black eyes was walking in, his face pale and lifeless. With no other choice, I jumped down. My whole body felt like it was falling into an endless void, the wind whistling in my ears. The painful fall made me dizzy, but luckily I landed on a damp bush, lessening the impact. I crawled up, my limbs trembling, my heart pounding. But when I looked up, I saw what scared me more than anything. In the thick fog, on the other side of the small road, there was a line of people standing still, all looking at me. No one moved, no one said anything. Only a deathly silence prevailed. The phone lit up again. You have fallen into their shelter. I stood there, frozen, my whole body frozen, as if petrified. Dozens of lifeless figures stood tall in the thick fog, all turning their heads to look at me. No one moved, no sound came out, but the atmosphere was so thick that I could hear my own heart pounding. Dark eye sockets, thin, motionless bodies, all like stone statues rising from the ground. The phone in my hand vibrated, a pale blue light illuminating my panicked face. The words appeared, "Don't move. They only see when you walk." I held my breath, my trembling hand gripping the phone. Just the slightest movement made my heart want to jump out of my chest. I stood still, trying to maintain my balance in the cold rain and soggy mud. The silence stretched on like torture. Then suddenly, one of the figures tilted his head slightly. A cracking sound echoed like the sound of dry bones colliding. I wanted to scream, but my voice was choked. The phone rang again. Don't look into its eyes. If our eyes meet, you will be sucked away forever. I quickly turned my face away, eyes closed, trying to dispel the horror that was creeping through every nerve. A rustling sound rang out. When I opened my eyes, I realized line of figures had gotten closer. The distance was only a few meters. I choked, cold sweat running down my back, even though the rain was still pouring down non-stop. I clearly felt them surrounding me, like predators herding their prey towards the abyss. In a moment of despair, the phone vibrated again. There is a narrow gap between two tree trunks behind you. Back away slowly, don't run. I looked around, trying to find a way out. Indeed, behind me were two large old trees, just enough space for a person to squeeze through. I took a deep breath and began to step back. My legs were shaking. The mud under my shoes made each step more difficult, but the line of figures also began to move. They did not run, did not hurry, just silently slid forward, their feet seemingly not touching the ground. The distance gradually shortened. I tried to stay calm, retreating step by step until my back touched the rough bark of the tree trunk. I turned my head, squeezed through the narrow gap, my heart pounding. On the other side of the narrow gap was a small path leading deep into the forest. I had just passed through when my phone lit up again. Run now. Don't look back. I obeyed, running headlong into the rain, the branches hitting my face painfully. Behind me, the sound of cracking rang out repeatedly, as if hundreds of bodies were moving at the same time. The sound of footsteps sliding across the wet ground made my back cold. The path led me to an empty lot, where there was a giant tree that had long died. The roots twisted and protruded from the ground like bony arms. I collapsed, exhausted, my lungs burning from the lack of air. In that brief moment, I looked up and saw something that made me freeze. On the rotten trunk, a scrawled line of words. "David, it's time." I shivered, my whole body cold. It couldn't be. Who carved this? And how did it know I was coming? I reached out and touched the carving, my fingertips stinging like a knife. At that moment, the fog ahead cleared, revealing the silhouette of an ancient brick house standing quietly in the middle of the forest. The dim light from the window seemed to be inviting me to enter. The phone vibrated again. A new message appeared. That house is the only place you have a chance. But remember, not every door inside leads to an exit. I swallowed, my eyes turned towards the mysterious house. Behind me, the figures were getting closer, their dark eyes flashing in the rain. I knew I had only one choice: to enter that house, where life could be more fragile than death. I stood in front of the old brick house, my feet heavy as if they were glued to the ground. Thick fog surrounded me, hiding all escape routes. Behind me, a line of figures was approaching, moving slowly but surely. I had no time to hesitate. The phone in my hand vibrated, the screen lit up. "Enter. This is your only chance." I took a deep breath, pushed open the heavy wooden door. It creaked, echoing like a cry from the past. Cold air rushed out, carrying with it the smell of mold and dust. I stepped in, closing the door behind me. Immediately, the footsteps outside stopped, as if those figures could only stand waiting at the threshold. But that silence did not make me feel more secure. On the contrary, it made me feel like I had just locked myself in a giant trap. Inside the house was dark, the only light coming from the phone screen. I panned it around, saw cracked walls covered in moss, old wooden floors creaking underfoot. On the walls hung faded old paintings, faces in the paintings distorted eyes that seemed to follow my every step. I shivered, trying to avoid that gaze, but the uneasiness still clung to me. I walked through the long hallway leading to the living room. In the middle of the room was a large wooden table burst into light as soon as I approached, the flickering flame casting my shadow on the wall. I was startled. My eyes looked around, but saw no one else. My phone vibrated. A text message appeared. "That flame is not for you. Do not come near." I took a step back, my heart pounding. It felt like something invisible was waiting for me to make a mistake. I turned back, continued walking to the next room. Wooden stairs appeared at the end of the hallway, leading to the second floor. I was about to continue when I heard a creaking sound above me, as if someone was walking. I raised my head. The darkness obscured it, but the steady footsteps still echoed. I hesitated, but then my phone lit up. "Don't go up. The upper floor is not for you." I stopped, my whole body trembling. This house was like a maze full of traps, and every step I took needed to be guided by those strange messages. I turned to the left, saw a door ajar. I pushed it gently and entered a small room. In the middle of the room was a large mirror, its frame intricately carved, but covered in a thick layer of dust. I approached, wiped the dust away, and my heart stopped. The reflection in the mirror was not my own. Instead, I saw another version of myself, a pale face, dark eyes, a faint crooked smile. I stepped back, but the figure in the mirror kept moving forward, pressing closer to the glass as if wanting to step out. The phone lit up at that moment. "Don't look at it for too long. If it escapes, you'll disappear." I trembled, quickly turning around and leaving the room. Behind me, the sound of glass breaking rang out, as if something had escaped from the mirror. I rushed out into the hallway, my heart pounding, my breath caught. At the end of the hallway appeared a heavy iron door. I hurriedly pushed it open. The door creaked, and a staircase leading down to the basement opened. A musty smell rose up, strong and suffocating. I hesitated, then the phone lit up again. "Go down to the basement. You must find what's waiting." I bit my lip, swallowed my fear, and started walking down. The sound of footsteps echoed in the narrow space. Each beat of my heart seemed to blend with that sound. When I reached the end, I saw a large, dim room. In the middle of the room was a wooden table, on which was placed an old notebook. I walked closer and opened the notebook. Inside were yellowed pages, with scribbles that were hard to read. But there was one page that made me freeze. On it was written my name, along with the words, "Tonight is the last time." I froze, my whole body cold. Impossible. This book existed before, but it was written about me, about tonight. I stood frozen in front of the dusty old notebook, each yellowed page trembling in my hand as if it had its own soul. The scrawled words "Tonight is the last time" printed clearly under my name made the blood in my body stop flowing. The air in the basement was thick. Each breath felt like it was being cut into pieces by invisible blades. I quickly closed the notebook, but as soon as my hand touched the cracked leather cover, a cold shiver ran down my spine, almost making me collapse. The phone vibrated. I looked at the screen, my heart pounding. "Don't close it. Flip more." I trembled as I opened the notebook. Each page seemed to be stuck together. It took all my strength to flip it open. Each page contained a name, accompanied by a date. I quickly realized that these names were not unfamiliar. They were the names of former residents of the apartment building I was living in. People who had disappeared or died mysteriously many years ago. Each name brought back scary stories I had heard in passing but never believed. I flipped a few more pages. My hands trembled, cold sweat dripping onto the paper. The page near the end made my heart feel like it was being squeezed. On it was a line, "Mark, your best friend, 11:30. My eyes widened, my whole body numb. Mark was the only friend I called for help when I first received this mysterious message. Impossible. How could this notebook know? I immediately pulled out my phone and pressed to call Mark. The phone rang, but no one answered. I tried calling again. This time there was a long beep. Then suddenly it turned into a strange, distorted sound like a whisper from nowhere. I jerked the phone away from my ear, my face pale. The screen showed the call was still connected, but the sound did not stop, ringing in rhythm like a curse. A new message popped up, interrupting the panic. You can't save him, but you can save yourself if you do. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. Why me? Why do I know everything so clearly? At that moment, the cellar shook violently. The old jars on the shelves fell to the ground and shattered, dust flying everywhere. Long, winding cracks appeared on the walls, from which a dark liquid like blood oozed out. I panicked, quickly grabbed the notebook and stepped back. The cellar door behind me suddenly slammed shut, trapping me in total darkness. The flickering flame from the candle in the corner of the room flared up unnaturally, revealing the silhouette of someone standing right on the other side of the cellar. I strained my eyes to look, but his face was covered in darkness. Only his bright eyes stared straight at me. I stepped back, my back hitting the cold wall. The phone vibrated again. Don't let him touch the notebook. I clenched the notebook in my hand, my heart pounding as if it was about to burst out of my chest. The figure approached, its steps making a rustling sound like dry bones hitting each other. I panicked, quickly trying to open the cellar door, but to no avail. The heavy iron door was locked from the outside. The footsteps got closer and closer. The cold air emanating made the space seem frozen. I was almost desperate. Then the phone lit up again. There is another exit. Under the floor, I bent down, using my hand to feel under the thick layer of dust. My hand touched a crack. I pulled hard. The wooden floor burst open, revealing a dark tunnel. Without thinking, I rushed down, hugging the notebook tightly. A distorted scream echoed behind me, shaking the entire cellar. The dark tunnel seemed to swallow me. I crawled in the narrow space. The air was musty and difficult to breathe. The footsteps above my head still echoed, but gradually became farther away. I gasped, trying to crawl faster. After a long distance, I finally saw a glimmer of light ahead. I crawled forward, pushed hard, and fell into the ruined backyard of the old brick house. I stood up, hugging the book tightly, my heart still not calm. But when I looked up, I saw something that almost made me collapse. On the mossy brick wall right in front of me, there was a line written in dry black ink. David, you will not escape tonight. I stood frozen in front of the mossy brick wall, where the dry black words were as clear as frozen blood. David, you will not escape tonight. My breath caught in my chest. My heart felt like it was being squeezed by an invisible hand. The fog swirled around, thicker than ever, filling the desolate courtyard with a cold white shadow. I trembled and clutched the notebook to my chest, as if it were the only talisman left in this nightmare. The phone in my hand vibrated. I looked down, the screen lit up with the words, "Don't panic. This is just the beginning. The truth is worse." I bit my lip until it bled, my eyes still fixed on the inscription. Who wrote it? And since when did it appear here? The question Questions rushed through my mind, but the only answer I got was the deadly silence around me. Suddenly, from the end of the courtyard, a strange sound rang out. A long scratching sound on the wet brick floor, like fingernails scratching stone. I turned around. My eyes met a dark shadow that was silently approaching. It was tall, its body was thin, its movements were like smoke, but each step left a trace of black mud on the floor. I slowly retreated, my back pressed against the wall with the words. The phone lit up. A text message appeared. Don't let it touch the words on the wall. Otherwise, you will disappear. I swallowed, my heart pounding like a drum. The dark shadow stopped right in front of the wall. Its eyes were empty, like a deep hole staring at me. I held my breath, my hands trembling with fear. It stretched out its long arm, its skinny fingers almost touching the words. I quickly shouted out in my unconsciousness, then rushed to the side. At that moment, the wall shook violently, the moss peeled off and fell, revealing not only that line of words, but also many other overlapping lines. All of them were the names of other people, each layer extending like a death list. I recognized a few familiar names that had been associated with mysterious disappearances I had heard vaguely. The shadow growled, the sound distorted, like hundreds of voices ringing out at once. I backed away, tripping on the cold ground. My phone vibrated so hard that it almost fell from my hand. A new message appeared. Run towards the old door, where the wall is cracked. That's the only way out. I immediately looked around, the weak light from the screen illuminating a long crack on the left wall. I crawled up, running in that direction. Despite my trembling limbs, the shadow let out a piercing screech, rushing after me at an unusual speed. The wind swirled violently, the mist swirled into small whirlwinds. I approached the crack, raised my hand and pushed hard. The wall suddenly opened up a gap, just enough for a person to pass through. I dodged, clearly feeling the cold hand brush against my shoulder. I fell into another dark area, my chest pounding painfully as I hit the ground. The new space that appeared was a narrow corridor. The brick walls were damp, the ceiling was low, forcing me to bend down to walk. The sound of heavy breathing echoed everywhere. I didn't know if it was mine or something else. I walked in the darkness. The phone in my hand became the only light. The smell of mold and rusty metal rushed into my nose. The phone vibrated again. You are in the underground corridor. It used to be a prison. Be careful, because not everything here is dead. I was cold. My mind was reeling. The corridor stretched endlessly. On both sides were old iron doors. Each door had small square windows like iron bars. I approached one door, shining the light inside. What I saw made my heart stop. Inside was not empty. There was a body sitting huddled in the corner, skinny and bony, wrinkled skin, black eyes wide open, staring out. It didn't move, but that look made my blood freeze. I backed away, my heart pounding, quickly moving away from the door. But as I continued, I realized that almost every cell had something sitting inside, motionless but its eyes following my every move. My breath was short, cold sweat pouring down my body. My phone lit up again. Don't stop. If you stop, they won't be motionless anymore. I gritted my teeth, trying to walk, even though my legs felt like they were about to collapse. The entire hallway seemed endless, each step a torture. I felt a whisper echoing behind me, not sure where it came from, but growing louder, as if the entire hallway was coming to life. When I got near the end, I saw an unusually large iron door. On it was engraved a faded line, "Exit." My heart clenched, a glimmer of hope lit up. I rushed forward, my hands shaking as I grasped the rusty handle. But just then, a long screech came from behind, and all the cell doors shook violently at the same time. I stood in front of the large iron door, my trembling hand on the rusty handle. My whole body was cold, sweat and rain running down my face. Behind me, the cell doors shook violently, the echoing sound like thousands of fingernails scraping on metal. The entire hallway was filled with a terrifying screech, mixed with the sound of wheezing coming from inside. I felt countless black eyes staring at me through the small gaps. The phone vibrated violently. I looked at the screen. The words appeared. "Open the door now. If you hesitate, they will escape." I swallowed, my whole body trembling. My hand tightened on the handle. I pulled hard. The iron door made a long creak. The sound echoed throughout the hallway. At that moment, the screech behind became even more intense. The cells shook as if they were about to burst. The door slowly opened, revealing a deep, dark space. I hurried inside, pulling the door shut. The sound of metal clashing rang out, blocking out the chaos behind me. I leaned against the door, panting, my heart pounding. But when I looked up, I realized I had just entered an even more terrifying space. Before my eyes was a giant room, high-ceilinged but dark. Mottled, moss-covered stone pillars stood everywhere. In the middle of the room was a strange circle drawn with a hardened black liquid. Around the circle were dozens of wooden masks, each with a different, distorted expression. Laughing, crying, angry, desperate. The light from the phone illuminated them, making them come to life, smiling mockingly at me. I walked slowly closer, my heart filled with anxiety. The phone vibrated. "Don't touch the circle. It has imprisoned many souls, but you need to look in the middle." I swallowed, taking a step forward. In the middle of the circle was another notebook, smaller, with a dark red leather cover. I pulled my hand back, not daring to move forward, but some invisible gaze seemed to be forcing me closer. I knelt down, holding up my phone to look. The words engraved on the cover were clearly visible. "The end." My heart was pounding, my mind was spinning. I opened the notebook with a trembling hand. On the first page, the words appeared like fresh blood. "David, 0 o'clock." I was stunned. The clock on my phone showed 11:57. The whole room shook. The air was thick. The wooden masks fell to the floor, creating a loud sound. I fell backwards. My heart stopped beating. The phone lit up. "You only have 3 minutes left. Decide now." In my panic, I heard whispers echoing from all directions. I no longer knew where they came from, only that they were surrounding me, urging me to open the notebook again. I recklessly flipped to the second page. This time, there was no writing, just a distorted drawing of myself, kneeling in the middle of the room, with a giant black shadow standing right behind me. A cold shiver ran down my neck. I shivered and turned around, and sure enough, that black shadow was standing right behind me, tall, its black eyes flashing in the darkness. I almost screamed, but my throat was tight. The phone lit up. "Don't look too long. Run to the door on the right." I glanced over. There was indeed a small door in the corner of the room. I rushed forward, my legs trembling as if I had no strength left. The black shadow growled, the sound shaking the whole room. The wooden masks cracked all at once. I touched the doorknob, pulling hard. The space behind was pitch black, but I had no other choice. Before entering, I glanced back one last time. The black shadow was still standing there, but it seemed to be fading, disappearing like smoke. The red book in the middle of the circle suddenly glowed, the words on it turning into bloodstains. I took a deep breath, then walked through the small door in the corner of the room. A cold air rushed straight into my body, making my whole body shiver. Inside was not the exit I had hoped for, but a narrow, long, pitch-black hallway. Only the faint light from the phone in my hand was enough to light the way. But that light also made the darkness around me seem even more dense. The walls on both sides were mottled with mold, and patches of lime peeled off, revealing cold grey tiles. I slowly walked step by step, the sound of my shoes echoing, making the sound last forever. The air here was heavy, as if someone was choking every breath. The phone vibrated, the screen lit up. Don't stop. If you stop, you'll hear them. I frowned, my heart pounding. But as soon as I finished reading, from deep in the hallway came scattered whispers. At first, they were as vague as the wind, but gradually became clearer. Each distorted word seemed to call my name directly. I panicked, walked faster, cold sweat pouring down my forehead. I turned my head to look back. The darkness behind me seemed thicker, as if chasing me after walking a distance. I noticed black handprints appearing on the wall. They stretched out, imprinted as if someone had pressed them hard against the wall with some dark liquid. I shivered, walked faster, but the further I walked, the more handprints appeared, overlapping each other, forming strange shapes. The phone lit up. Don't touch the wall. I immediately pulled my hand back, my heart pounding. Suddenly, a shrill screech rang out from somewhere. I was startled. The light of the phone shone on the wall in front of me. On it, between the black handprints, a pale, distorted face appeared, as if trying to escape. The black eyes were fixed on me, the mouth wide open, as if screaming, but no sound came out. I stepped back, my heart almost bursting. The whispers around me grew louder, blending into a chaotic chord, making me almost lose control. The phone vibrated again. Calm down. Go straight. There's an exit at the end of the corridor. Don't look to either side. I nodded repeatedly, as if the invisible person could see me. I kept walking, trying not to look left or right. But in the corner of my eyes, I could still see the dark figures clinging to the wall, their eyes following my every step. After what seemed like an endless distance, I saw a dim light at the end of the corridor. A ray of hope flashed. I walked faster, my heart pounding violently. But then, when I was only a few meters away, the door at the end of the corridor suddenly slammed shut, making a loud, resounding sound. I stopped, despair rising. The phone lit up. Don't be afraid. Call my name 3 times. The door will open. I stammered, my voice trembling, but I still did as I was told. David. 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 The door slowly creaked open, a dim light appearing again. I hurriedly ran over, pulling hard to open it. Outside was not normal light, but a small courtyard covered in fog. Cold, but at least there were no more shadows lingering around. I stepped out, closing the door. At that moment, from the corridor behind me came a series of simultaneous screams, as if hundreds of imprisoned souls were angry that I had escaped. The sound lasted, echoing in my head even after I left that place. I collapsed on the cold, damp ground, clutching my phone tightly in my hand. The screen lit up once more. You just passed through one of the prison floors. But there is more. I stared at the words portals of hell waiting for me to enter. I collapsed on the damp floor, breathing heavily, each heartbeat reverberating in my chest, as if it was about to burst out. The door behind me was closed, but the screaming from the hallway still echoed, like hundreds of souls desperate for their prey to escape. The fog around me was so thick that I could only see a few steps ahead. The air was so thick and cold that it froze my lungs. I slowly stood up, hugging my phone tightly, the weak light from the screen illuminating a small area. The old notebook was still in my other hand, heavy as a rock, dragging me down into the abyss of my fate. I looked around. There was no path, no other door. Just an empty courtyard covered in fog, eerily silent. Then, from within the fog, I heard a sound. At first it was vague, like the rustling of fabric. Then it became clear as unfamiliar footsteps. I was startled, took a few steps back, eyes straining to look towards the sound. One by one, blurry figures began to appear, flickering in the mist, not standing still like the figures in the forest. This time they moved, distorted like stretched drawings. Long arms, cramped legs, heads tilted to one side. Each step slow but irregular, as if an invisible hand was pulling the strings. The phone vibrated. I quickly looked at the screen. Don't look too long. They don't belong to this world. If you stare, you will be pulled into their movements. I trembled and turned away, but still couldn't shake the feeling that dozens of distorted eyes were watching my every move. One of the figures stepped closer, only a few meters away. I sneaked a glance and almost screamed. Its face had no clear shape, just a mass of pale skin with a wide open mouth, no scream. But that silence was more terrible than a scream. I retreated, my legs trembling. The notebook in my hand fell to the ground. As soon as it hit the ground, the figures stopped at the same time, their heads tilted to one side, their distorted eyes staring straight at the notebook. The phone lit up. Don't let them touch it. If you lose the notebook, you will lose your chance to live. I quickly bent down to pick it up. My heart felt like it was about to burst. But as soon as my fingers touched the cover of the notebook, a figure rushed towards me at a terrifying speed. I panicked, fell backwards, still holding the notebook tightly. The figure stopped a few centimeters away from me, its body shaking abnormally, then slowly retreated into the mist. I sat down, my whole body trembling. Whispers echoed around me, like a ghostly song, wordless but haunting. I hugged the notebook tightly, stood up again, trying to walk in the mist. Every step was a torture, because I felt that there were countless figures hovering around me, just waiting for me to make a mistake. After a long while, I finally saw a dim light ahead. A glimmer of hope rose in my heart, and I walked faster. But as I got closer, I realized it wasn't natural light. It was the light from candles placed in a long row, burning dimly, leading straight to a moss-covered stone gate. The figures in the mist immediately retreated, not daring to cross the candle path. I gasped, walking along the candlelit path. The whispers gradually died down, replaced by a tense silence. I touched the stone gate. Cold, solid. The phone vibrated again. Behind this gate is the truth. But once you enter, you will never return to the way you were before. I swallowed, my hand trembling as I placed it on the gate. A series of questions rang through my head, but the only answer I had at the moment was to keep going. Whatever was behind the gate, I knew I had gone too far to stop. The heavy stone gate creaked as I pushed it open. A blast of cold air rushed out, so strong that it extinguished the flickering candle behind me. Darkness swallowed the misty courtyard. high ceiling and vertical stone walls. Dozens of mirrors of different sizes hung on the walls. The terrifying thing was that each mirror did not reflect me, but reflected another room where other versions of David were struggling, screaming, or motionless like corpses. I panicked, my whole body cold. The phone vibrated in my hand. The screen lit up. Don't look too long. Each mirror is a path. Choose the right one, or you will be trapped forever. I stepped back, my eyes scanning the mirrored wall. The echoes from afar sounded like someone's footsteps circling, but I knew I was alone in this space. I approached an oval mirror. It reflected me sitting in my own apartment, my face blankly looking at my phone. The scene was eerily familiar. I reached out to touch it lightly. The mirror surface was cold but soft like water. A strong suction pulled my hand in. I jerked back. My heart stopped beating. To the right, another mirror reflected me in the abandoned park. Behind me, a giant black shadow approaching. I trembled, my mind spinning. Could each of these mirrors be a part of my destiny, and all leading to the same ending? The whisper rang again, this time right next to my ear. I jumped, turned my head, but saw no one. The phone lit up. Only one mirror leads outside. The rest are prisons. Be careful. I held the phone tightly, stepped back into the middle of the room, my eyes scanning each mirror. The other versions of me in there started to move at the same time. Looking out, staring straight at me, one of them started to mumble. I couldn't hear clearly, but read the words, "Save me." I shivered, stepped back, but behind me was another mirror. In it, a version of me with a deformed face was knocking hard on the glass, blood flowing from my mouth, eyes crazy. The loud banging sound echoed throughout the room, almost making me collapse. I hugged the old notebook tightly, my heart pounding. At that moment, the phone lit up again. Find a mirror without your shadow. That's the way out. I immediately looked around. Sure enough, in the farthest corner of the room was a mirror covered in thick dust. Its surface was dark, reflecting nothing. I walked forward trembling, my legs feeling heavy. When I was a few steps away, I heard a noise behind me. I turned around. The versions of me in the other mirrors simultaneously slammed their hands on the glass. Their eyes angry, their mouths wide open as if they were about to scream. The sound echoed throughout the room, forcing me towards the dark mirror. I had no other choice. I placed my hand on the mirror. The cold glass trembled like water waves. The phone lit up. Enter. Don't look back. I gritted my teeth, took a deep breath, and let my body be sucked into the dark mirror. It felt like falling into an endless void. The surrounding light was extinguished, leaving only the sound of my heart pounding in my chest. The feeling of falling through the dark mirror was like being swallowed by a giant vortex. I didn't know how long I fell. I only remembered the buzzing sound echoing in my head and my heart pounding. Then, suddenly, my body hit the cold ground. I opened my eyes and found myself lying on the wet floor. The musty smell, mixed with the smell of rusty metal, rushed straight into my nose. I sat up and looked around with my phone. The space appeared dim. The wall was black and mottled. On it were streaks of water flowing down. But the strange thing was that the water didn't flow down, but up towards the ceiling. I was stunned. My whole body was cold. The dripping sound echoed everywhere. But instead of sounding like water, it sounded like the sobbing of lost souls. I walked tremblingly. Each step made a strange echo, lasting forever. This space was not like a hallway, nor a room, but like a maze of distorted mirrors, where each wall reflected my image but distorted, stretched, and deformed. Some of the reflections even moved slowly, different from me, as if living a separate life. The phone vibrated. I looked at the screen. The words appeared. Don't believe the reflections. They want to replace you. I inhaled sharply, cold sweat running down my spine. When I took a few steps forward, the left wall reflected me, but it was smiling while I was not. I panicked, turned to the opposite wall, and saw the version of myself crying blood. I backed away, my heart pounding violently. The sound of rain echoed more clearly, each beat heavy like a hammer. But I knew there was no sky above. All was just a distorted sound from this world. I tried to stay calm, walked faster, but then a strange sound made me freeze. It was another footstep, not mine, coming from behind. I turned around, the light of my phone sweeping over me, but I saw no one. Only the wet walls reflected my distorted shadow. But when I looked closely, one of the reflections did not disappear when I turned away. It stood still, its black eyes staring. I trembled, rushing forward, not daring to look back. The phone lit up again, the exit at the end of the maze. But only one path leads to the real one. The other paths will trap you forever. I gripped the phone tightly, my heart pounding. The path ahead split into 3 paths. On the left was the sound of heavy rain. On the right was the sound of soft crying. And in the middle was an unusual silence. I hesitated, my whole body tensing. The reflections on the wall moved in unison, waving their hands, inviting me to follow them. Some pointed to the left, others pointed to the right. I gritted my teeth, trying to listen to my instincts. The phone vibrated. Go straight, but don't stop. I rushed into the middle passage, my legs trembling but not daring to stop. The walls on both sides seemed to press against me, and there were light knocks from inside, as if someone was trying to escape. My heart was pounding, and cold sweat mixed with the steam falling down. Finally, I saw an old wooden door appear. I rushed to it, grabbed the rusty handle, and pulled hard. The door swung open, and on the other side was a pitch-black space, but it smelled of wind, no longer musty. I stepped in and closed the door, but just as my feet touched the new floor, the phone vibrated. The words that appeared made me choke. You have just entered the last place I can guide you. The rest you must face on your own. The wooden door closed behind me, leaving a dry echo in the endless void. I stood still clutching the phone. The light from the screen was still weak, but this time there were no messages. Just a blank, cold, silent white space. My heart clenched. Since the beginning of this series of horrors, there had always been lines of text leading me to safety. But now, I was completely alone. The space around me was pitch black, so thick that the light from the phone could only illuminate a few steps. I took a deep breath. The sound of my breathing seemed magnified in the endless darkness. I took a step, the sound of my shoes echoing on the dry stone floor, lingering and groaning. Each step made my heart tense, as if I were committing myself to a game without rules. Suddenly, from afar, a sound rang out. A light, steady tapping sound, like someone was using their fingernails to scratch the stone wall. I turned around, but there was only thick darkness. I walked faster, but the tapping sound still followed, getting closer. I felt something moving behind me, but when I turned around, it was gone. I tried to calm down, continued walking. Then suddenly, the light from the phone flickered. The screen flickered, distorted images appeared. Not words, but short clips of images, like a broken video. In it, I saw myself, but my face was distorted. My eyes were black and empty, my mouth opened wide in a strange smile. The image only lasted a few seconds and then disappeared, leaving the screen blank. I was stunned, my heart pounding. A cold wind blew by, carrying a murmuring sound. I strained my ears to listen. It wasn't the sound of wind, but a jumble of whispers. Hundreds of voices overlapped, calling my name over and over again. I held my head, feeling like my brain was about to explode. I screamed loudly to block it out, but my voice was drowned in the chaos. I continued walking. Then suddenly, the light of the phone revealed a scene that made me choke. In front of me were dozens of motionless figures, lined up in 2 long rows forming a path. They had no faces, just black bodies with empty holes for eyes. Even without any expression, I could still clearly feel their gazes piercing straight through me. I trembled as I stepped between those 2 rows. The air was thick and numbingly cold. With each step, I was afraid that they would suddenly rush over. But they remained still, silent as statues. When I was about to reach the end of the path, one of them tilted his head slightly. A cracking sound rang out. Then they all tilted their heads at the same time, staring. I was almost suffocated. Quickly dashing out of the line of people and running straight. The light from the phone illuminated an iron door in the distance. I rushed towards it, my heart pounding. But as my hand touched the handle, the phone screen lit up with a surprising line of text. Wrong way, I was startled, turned around, and immediately realized that the dark line of people had disappeared. Instead, the dense darkness began to move, like thousands of hands reaching out from the void towards me. I panicked, turned around, and rushed into the small path that had just appeared on the left. The wind howled. The darkness rolled behind me, like a giant monster was chasing me. I ran until I was exhausted. My lungs burned. My heart felt like it was about to burst. But in front of me, an unusual glimmer of light gradually appeared, as dim as moonlight. I rushed towards it, hoping that this would be the real escape. But as I got closer, I realized that the light did not come from the moon or any other natural light source. It came from a round mirror suspended in midair, emitting a strange pale blue light. On the mirror, the reflection was not me, but another version, standing there with a cold smile, holding a brightly lit phone with the words, "You will never escape." I stood frozen in front of the hanging circular mirror. The pale blue light emitting from it made the surrounding darkness cold. The reflection in the mirror was not me, but a distorted version, a pale face, eyes as deep as black holes, a mouth that smiled from ear to ear. I clenched my phone tightly, my heart pounding, my whole body trembling. The other version slowly raised the phone. The red words on the screen appeared. "You will never escape." I backed away, my mind spinning. But the mirror suddenly shifted slightly, following my every step. Whether I dodged to the left or right, it kept the same distance, as if hanging there to tie me to the thing inside. The whispers around me rang out again, this time clearer, like distorted conversations from many people. They repeated the same sentence. "I will replace. I will replace." I held my head, feeling like my brain was about to explode. The phone in my hand suddenly lit up. For the first time since entering this place, it showed a short line. "Don't trust your eyes. Trust your shadow." I blinked. Before I could understand, the version in the mirror began to move. It stepped closer, as if the mirror was no longer a barrier. I panicked and backed away, but behind me was only endless space. In my despair, I noticed something strange. My shadow on the stone floor did not match my real movements. My shadow trembled while my body stood still. When I raised my head, the light from my phone shone down. I saw my shadow leaning in another direction, where a faint streak of light flashed. I suddenly understood that was the path I needed to take. Without thinking much, I rushed towards the direction my shadow pointed. The mirror shook violently. A scream rang out from within, distorted and shrill. The monstrous version slammed its hand against the mirror, cracking the surface like a spiderweb. The debris flew everywhere, falling to the ground with a clanging sound. I ran as fast as I could, the blue light from the mirror fading behind me. A path appeared in front of me, leading me into another space. But as soon as I stepped in, I stopped. This new space was no longer stone or brick, but an empty land covered with wet grass, with dry tree stumps standing alone. The smell of smoke wafted in the air. I realized this was like an abandoned campsite, cold and eerily quiet. I slowed down, my eyes scanning around. There were traces of old tents on the ground, but they were all torn apart by the wind. Some wooden chairs were lying around, some were even broken in half. In the middle of the ground, a fire was covered in black ash. But the horrible thing was that the ashes were still smoking faintly, as if someone had just left a few minutes ago. The phone rang again. Not here. This is just a memory loop. Don't sit down. Don't touch anything. I clenched my fists, my mind reeling. Memory loop? Does that mean this place contains the remains of those who were trapped? I shivered, walking faster. But as I passed the dying fire, a hoarse voice rang out from behind me. Sit down, David. Just rest a bit. I froze. My heart stopped. I didn't turn around, but in the corner of my eye, I saw a figure sitting next to the fire, his back turned to me. His shoulders shook, as if he was laughing softly. I swallowed hard, continued walking, not daring to respond. But that laughter gradually turned into crying, choking, then turned into a piercing scream. I ran as fast as I could, my heart pounding. Behind me, footsteps rang out, chasing me closely. I rushed forward, where the faint light in the distance beckoned as I neared the destination. The phone lit up with the last line, "Don't let it touch your shoulder. Otherwise, you will remain in this memory forever." I shouted loudly, using all my strength, rushing through the door of light that had just appeared. Behind me, a cold hand brushed against my shirt, almost pulling me back. I rushed through the door of light, my heart pounding, my breath coming in short gasps as if I had just escaped death. When I opened my eyes, I no longer saw fog, no longer had pitch black darkness or the haunting musty smell. Before my eyes was a bright white space that hurt my eyes. I blinked repeatedly, trying to adjust to see more clearly. This space was vast. The white floor was smooth as marble. Light poured down from an invisible source above. Everything was clean and pure to an absurd degree, a complete contrast to the layers of hell I had just passed through. But that purity made me suffocate, because it was not natural, but like a mask hiding the horrors underneath. I walked slowly forward. The phone in my hand still lit, but the screen was blank. No more text to guide me. The sound of footsteps echoed in the vast, endless space. Then suddenly, I saw faces was only smooth skin, but their mouths were still smiling, wide and even smiles. I stepped back, my heart pounding, but they began to approach, their footsteps light, their voices murmuring but not matching their mouths. One of them reached out as if to touch me. I backed away hard, almost falling. At that moment, the ground beneath my feet shook. Dark cracks appeared, spreading across the smooth white floor. From the cracks, a stream of cold air spread out, curling up like black smoke. I panicked, my eyes darting around, looking for a way out. The phone suddenly vibrated after a long period of silence. The words on the screen read, "This is not real light. This is a prison of memories. Don't let them touch you." I clenched my phone tightly, my heart almost bursting. The eyeless figures continued to approach, the smiles on their faces growing wider, distorted to the point of being ridiculous. I turned around and ran, but this white space had no end. I ran and ran, but I could only see endless, shining walls. The murmuring laughter surrounded me, echoing everywhere, making my head spin. I was almost desperate when suddenly, in the far corner, a pitch-black door appeared, standing out against the white background. I rushed forward, but the eyeless men also moved at the same time, running after me at an abnormal speed. Their long hands reached out, only a few centimeters from my shoulder. I shouted loudly, using all my strength to rush towards the door. But when I was about to touch the handle, the ground under my feet cracked open. A deep darkness appeared, swallowing the surrounding light. I slipped, half of my body falling into the darkness. I grabbed the door handle tightly, my arms shaking. Behind me, a cold hand grabbed my ankle. I screamed, using all my strength to pull the door open. The white light suddenly narrowed, swallowing everything, leaving only me and the darkness in front of me at that moment. The phone lit up again. "If you fall, you will become one of them. Choose." I gritted my teeth, using all my strength to pull myself through the pitch-black door. Behind me, screams rang out simultaneously, heavy and distorted. I fell through the door. The darkness swallowed me. Everything was silent. No more light, no more sound, just absolute emptiness. I fell into the darkness, feeling like I was falling into a bottomless abyss. There was no impact, no stopping point, just an endless suspension in a dense black space. I opened my mouth to scream, but the sound was stuck in my throat, fading away as soon as it left, as if the darkness had swallowed my voice. The phone was still in my hand. The faint blue light from the screen was the only thing keeping me from going crazy. But the screen was blank, no more messages. I held it tightly, my heart pounding, cold sweat dripping down. Suddenly, from the endless void, a soft whisper rang out. At first distant, then gradually enveloping me, as if dozens of voices were whispering at once. I spun around in the darkness, eyes straining to find the source of the sound, but there was nothing but emptiness. Then I realized those whispers were not coming from outside, but from inside my head. The initially fragmented words quickly connected into a clear sentence. "You have been chosen," I trembled, my heart almost stopping. "Who chose me? For what?" I screamed in despair. "Who are you?" There was no answer, only a cold, lingering giggle. I held my head, trying to dispel the sounds, but they grew louder, resounding like a war drum dot suddenly. The light from the phone flickered, and then a line appeared. "You are in the middle. This is not the end, nor the beginning." I was stunned. Between, what did that mean? I glanced around, and for the first time, the darkness began to move. From deep within the void, small dots of light gradually flashed. But when I looked closely, it was not light, but white eyes opening. Dozens, then hundreds of eyes appeared, suspended in the darkness, watching me in unison. I choked, retreating unconsciously, but eyes were everywhere. A deep voice rang out, clearer than the whispers. You read the book. You know the name. You can't go back. I clenched the old book still tucked under my arm, my whole body trembling. I opened it. The page immediately lit up. A new line appeared right before my eyes. David ends at 0 o'clock. I looked at the phone clock. 11:58. My heart clenched. Only 2 minutes left. I screamed, I don't want to. I'm not ready. But laughter answered, spreading throughout the space, distorted and cold. Those white eyes began to blink like lights, then gradually turned black. I knew they were about to act. The phone vibrated violently. The line appeared one last time. There is a way out, but there is a price. I panicked, shouted, whatever the price. Just escape. The screen went black. Darkness swallowed the light again. Those eyes began to approach, hundreds of gazers pressing on me. My body trembled, my heart pounded. I felt like I was about to be pulled down, about to disappear into nothingness. But at that moment, from afar, a thin thread-like light appeared, gradually expanding. I trembled and rushed towards it, the eyes around me simultaneously contracting, emitting terrifying screams. I used all my strength to rush straight into the light, feeling like I was going through thousands of hands trying to hold me back. A sharp pain ran through my body, but I continued. As soon as I touched the light, all the eyes simultaneously closed. The darkness collapsed like a tide. I dashed through the crack of light, my body torn apart by the unbearable pain. When I opened my eyes, I realized I was no longer in the pitch black. Before me was a barren field. The ground cracked like a spider web. The wind blew fiercely, carrying the smell of dust and ashes. The sky above was not pitch black, but red, as if an invisible fire was burning the atmosphere. I tried to stand up, my mind spinning. The phone was still in my hand, but the screen only flickered continuously, showing chaotic characters before turning off. I clenched it tightly, feeling lost and helpless. But when I raised my head, I was stunned. In the field around me were dozens of blurry figures, their bodies thin, their faces distorted with anger. Their eyes were white, empty but shining with hatred. They stood in a circle, surrounding me. At first it was silent, then each groan echoed, overlapping, forming a terrifying chord. Those souls seemed no longer human, but people trapped between hatred and darkness. I trembled and retreated, but the ground beneath my feet cracked, emitting a cracking sound. I was afraid that if I took one more step back, I would fall into the endless abyss. Left with no choice, I stood still, my eyes glued to the approaching souls. Suddenly, the phone lit up again. The words appeared. They want justice. They want revenge. You are the only one who brings them a chance. I was confused, not understanding the meaning. What chance? What could I do in this devilish place? A soul stepped out of the circle, its figure trembling, its skinny hands reaching towards me. It opened its mouth, but instead of words, only a piercing whistling sound came out. I covered my ears, my whole body trembling. The phone vibrated. Listen to them. Don't be afraid. I gritted my teeth, took a deep breath, and tried to concentrate. I were the one holding the key. Another soul rushed towards me, its face distorted as it screamed, "You are also on the list. You must also pay." I collapsed to the ground, my heart pounding. The phone lit up again. "If you don't help them, you will become part of this circle." I shouted, "What should I do?" But there was no answer, only the screen flashing endlessly. The circle gradually closed. They approached, their white eyes fixed on me, their cold hands stretched out. I felt the air thick, hard to breathe. The old notebook in my hand was burning hot, the pages shaking as if coming to life. I opened it, seeing a series of names shining brightly, each page turning blood-red dot immediately. Those souls screamed in unison, the screams piercing the crimson sky. I was forced to kneel, my mind spinning. Each scream was like thousands of needles piercing my mind, in the moment of almost losing consciousness. The phone lit up again. "Choose one. Free them, or replace them." I raised my head, my eyes wide open in despair. That meant I had to choose between freeing a certain soul or becoming a substitute. I screamed loudly, but the crimson wind swallowed the sound. The circle of souls closed tightly. Each hand was about to touch my shoulder. I knew I had no time.